What is going on, everybody? Welcome on in here to the Eagle Wakeup on the Auburn Undercover YouTube channel. My name is Nathan King here from inside Neville Arena, where Auburn got back on track, taking down Mississippi State 78-63. Of course, this was Auburn's first home game in 2 weeks. They had the Kentucky game that they lost, had a week off, played Georgia, played Tennessee, and then get back home and get back in the win column against the Bulldogs. And of course, they avenged that loss earlier in the season in Starkville. But the theme ever since that Kentucky game continued here today. Their offensive response, I remember Dylan Cardwell saying it was completely absurd. They scored 59 points against Kentucky. It was the worst offensive performance in a lot of areas of the Bruce Pearl era in this arena. You've seen Auburn's response in the 3 games since then on offense has been really great. You scored 97 points at Georgia without Jalen Williams. You score 84 points in that tough loss at Tennessee. That's a number 5 defense in the country, according to Ken Palm. On this floor here tonight, the number 15 defense in the country, Mississippi State. Auburn scores 78 points, and just kind of tracking how this team is doing offensively, they're peaking at the right time, and they're playing some of their best basketball of the season on offense, even with the Tennessee loss at the right time of the season. This is the first time since 2017 that Auburn has made 40% or better of its three-point shots in 3 straight games. They've done that, obviously, ever since the Kentucky loss. Janai Broome led Auburn tonight with 17 points. Really balanced effort for Auburn on both ends of the floor. You saw a lot of guys making plays on both ends, both on the offensive and defensive end. 4 guys in double figures. Denver Jones, a great game for him. Bruce Pearl was able to kind of complement his defensive playmaking after the game. Jalen Williams, this was his first game back in the starting lineup for Auburn after his injury, and he also got recognized during the game by becoming Auburn's all-time leader in games played, I guess you should say. He's played now more games than anybody in Auburn history. He was obviously already Auburn's all-time winningest player, and today he beat out Frankie Sullivan, who previously owned that record with his 135th game in an Auburn uniform. And then you had Chad Baker-Mazara, who also had 10 points for Auburn. The start to this game on defense for the Tigers was really, really key in carrying them through the rest of the way. They opened up, kind of a steady 15-ish point lead that even when Mississippi State started storming back, making their run that you kind of expected out of a good team. This is an NCAA tournament team, and Bruce Pearl mentioned that after the game. Auburn was able to stave that off because of, how well they closed out the game. We know their depth has allowed them to do that a lot this season, but also on defense early in the game. Mississippi State started 2 of 19 from the floor. They had 10 turnovers in the first half. 5 of those were in the first few minutes of the game. It took until 3 minutes into the second half for Mississippi State to have more made shots than turnovers. So that just kind of shows you how Auburn was able to get off to a good lead here and kind of keep the energy high. It was a great crowd. It was kind of a crowd that was a little sparse before tip-off. It is spring break. It's the first day of spring break for the students, but you wouldn't really know it with the way the game went. I was kind of wondering, this could be one that you'd be okay with and saying, it wasn't the best crowd of the season, but it's kind of understandable given the timing of it. They let fans come down into the jungle. Kind of a tangent here, but I just thought Bruce Pearl mentioned after the game saying that was a really good crowd, and they impressed me in that area as well. Mississippi State started to storm back there in the second half. They cut it to as close as 7 points. Josh Hubbard, man, absolutely fantastic. Made 4 3-pointers in the second half. He might be your SEC Freshman of the Year. He has now had, let's see, how many points did he have today? 23 points today. He has 88 points now over his last 3 games against LSU, Kentucky, and now Auburn. Just a fantastic player there and a freshman scoring guard for the Bulldogs. But Auburn, as they've done many times with their depth, were able to pull away. Guys started making plays down the stretch. Denver Jones hit a 3-pointer in transition to put Auburn up by 12, and Mississippi State never got back within single digits after that point. So what does this mean for Auburn moving forward? This was their toughest remaining game of the regular season by far. They go to Missouri on Tuesday. It's a weird spot. It's an 8 p.m. tip-off on a Tuesday. It's a quick turnaround. Auburn's only played one other Tuesday game in SEC play this season. That was the Texas A&M game. So it'll be kind of a bizarre-feeling game. It's kind of a weird place to play as well. Don't be surprised if that one's a little closer, at least for some portion of the game, than people might expect. But that's the worst team in the league. I don't believe they've tipped off against Ole Miss, or they might have a little while ago before I started recording this. But they're winless in the SEC. That's a game Auburn's going to be heavily favored against. And then senior day here inside Neville Arena against Georgia. Auburn will be a heavy favorite there as well. Of course, last Saturday they played really, really well against the Bulldogs on the road. And so if you're Auburn today, South Carolina took down Florida. What does that mean for Auburn standing in the top 4 of the SEC? Basically what you needed was South Carolina to lose at least 1 game, and then the combination, the final 6 games between Florida and Kentucky, you needed them to lose 1 game. Okay, well, Florida lost today, but they lost to South Carolina. So you still need the Gamecocks. If the Gamecocks and Kentucky win out from here on, Auburn will actually get edged out for that number 4 spot. So if you're Auburn, you just kind of do what you can at this point. Again, your last 2 games of the season, you're not going to get a much lighter finish to the schedule than what they've got coming up here. You just try to handle business the best you can and hope that South Carolina or Kentucky drops. Kentucky has to go to Tennessee. South Carolina hosts Tennessee. Tennessee plays Alabama tonight. And so you're, after that game against the Vols earlier this week, kind of rooting for the Vols to take down one of those two teams. And so really good win. That's what Bruce Pearl said after the game. He said, look, this is Mississippi State kind of brings the feeling of an NCAA tournament second round game. And look, Auburn scored 20 more points than they did in the loss to Starkville. And so that's always a good sign when you're able to even the season series with that performance. And now with that payback game against Mississippi State, payback game against Alabama, you kind of cut down on the number of teams that Auburn hasn't beaten in SEC play this season. So 78-63, Auburn takes down the Bulldogs here on their home floor. They're back in action on Tuesday against Missouri. We'll continue to have all kinds of coverage. So go check out auburnundercover.com. Got a bunch of stuff up here on Saturday night from the game. Going to continue that into Sunday, and then all week off for spring football. They're on spring break, of course, with the university. So it's going to be lots of basketball coverage coming y'all's way. Be sure to check it out, auburnundercover.com. I'm Nathan King. Talk to y'all soon.